to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
This is Tom Dutta, and I am the host of the Quiet Warrior Show, and we're trying something very different today. I'm actually walking on a trail. I live in British Columbia, Canada, on the west coast in a town called Port Moody. And well, we have what's called Broad Inlet. It's a huge inlet of water surrounded by incredible forest. In fact, if you follow that inlet all the way out, it takes you to the ocean, Pacific Ocean, and then all the way off to the Pacific Rim. And so you might hear the crunch of gravel under my feet. You might hear the whisper of people walking by me because I'm live on the trail. And it is a beautiful sunny day here in Port Moody. So as a host and executive producer of the Quiet Warrior Show, you've come to know me as somebody who interviews other people. We release those shows every other week. And in between, I like to do a show on something to do with leadership, something connected to my book, The Way of the Quiet Warrior, which is really about unleashing greatness from within, helping people find that greatness that they have within them to create success and what I call from the inside out. In other words, success and happiness, not just in their career or the work that they do, but also in themselves personally. I always say that success feels incredible, but happiness can last a lifetime. And so are you a seeker? If you're listening to this, are you seeking? Is there still something that hasn't appeared yet in your career, in your life? Each time you achieve a success or achieve a promotion at work, or you're waiting for somebody to come along and tell you that that thing you just did was incredible, how are you feeling within yourself? How are you feeling when you wake up in the morning? Do you wake up and say, I love myself first? You don't need others to tell you how great you are. You don't need the title or the recognition from your peers. Those are the people that live the happiest lives. So today's episode is about a subject that touched me deeply, and it was about Anthony Bourdain's passing at age 61. Regretfully, he was found hanged in his apparently in his hotel room somewhere in France where he was shooting some of the shows. And so I've taken some mixed feedback on some of the work I've done on social media about this, and that's why I wanted to do this show. People are saying, well, why post about him and why not post about every other person? Or, you know, people, there's fallen soldiers in the world. Why aren't we recognizing those people more? And so let me talk about what I believe and teach, what I know, which is really about character. And so I want you to do a self-quiz for a moment, and it starts with a few questions. So in your mind's eye, or if you can write this down, I want you to answer these questions. Number one, who is the person that helped you the most at some point in your life, that you remember helped you the most when times were tough? Write down who that might be. Number two, I want you to talk about who is the most famous person in the world that you can remember in a split second, that you can think just like yesterday, this person is in your mind's eye. Number three is, what is the name of the teacher or teachers that helped you the most in your lifetime? All right, well, you probably got those answers down, and if you didn't get those answers, it's okay. We're now crossing over, by the way, a bridge here. I'm going to stop on the bridge, and maybe you can hear the water flowing. We have beautiful creeks, and the mountain snow caps are melting. We have, moderate 75, 80 degree weather this time of year, and it is spectacular. I'm looking at that, and I'm going to keep walking now over this bridge and take a few steps downward and continue the conversation with you. So that was my first quiz. The second one is really a question, and this is a deeper one, so you may need to think more or come back to this, but think about one or two people that touched you the most in your life, that made you feel loved and respected. Think about those people. What did they do to nurture, love, and respect you? What did they do to make you feel and remember them as those people? And it can be a coworker, it can be a boss, it can be somebody in your family. Just think about those two. And I'm going to give you some of my answers to that. We're really coming around this in a long way to get back to why did I recognize Anthony Bourdain's suicide, hanged himself after many years of success. And I'll get to that part of the story at the end, so stay tuned for a little bit on that. So here I am on the trail, and so now that you've done the couple questions, let me talk about what I'm trying to get you to see here. And that is that as leaders, when we lead people, when we're in relationships with other people, we are always remembered by the people that we touch deeply, that we touch personally. So I'm going to give you the answers to those questions, a couple answers anyway, for the sake of my time here. That my Uncle Tom, who's my mom's youngest brother, and my Uncle Tom's in his senior years now, I remember him as being one of the and only family members who nurtured me, who loved me, who cared for me. When we were kids, as you might know my story from my book, The Way of the Quiet Warrior, it's a story about my childhood, my youth, and coming through a difficult situation where my parents divorced. My father was an alcoholic, and our family was pretty much destroyed, and we all went our own ways. I went into corporate America and became a successful executive. And so today here I am, and I'm talking about my Uncle Tom. Well, what did my Uncle Tom do to make me remember him as one of those people? Well, my Uncle Tom knew what was going on in our family. His sister, my mom, was very close to him. And at a time when the household and we all went our separate ways, my Uncle Tom used to have us come over and do sleepovers. And, there we were on East 35th Avenue, and down the street was the local Dairy Queen, and my uncle would have us in his home, and he would take us for ice cream, and he would have some fun with us. We'd play penny poker, and keep in mind we're in our youthful years. But the thing is that I never remember my Uncle Tom ever saying anything negative about my father, or ever bringing up anything negative about anybody else. He was always a stand-up kind of guy who had so much love and caring for us that when I think about the lessons that he taught me in life, that's what I remember. He nurtured and loved me no matter what was going on in his life, and I felt like I was the most important person at that time. So who is the person in your life like that you know personally? My other one would be a fella named Terry, who was the president of a company I worked for, and I was climbing the ladder in my career. I was in my late 20s, and it was my first executive vice president role. And well, every day that I woke up and I went to the office, can you hear that crow up there? It's pretty amazing, the scenery here right now in the trail. Nature is so awesome. And so I would go into the office, and every morning Terry would greet me in his office. I'd have to climb these stairs. It was a 2-story building, stairs up to the top level where he had his office. It was glass on the outside. This was a brick building in the middle of an industrial area. And downstairs was the floor of a banking branch, all the tellers and the cash and the vault, and my office, which was in the corner. And so we walk up the stairs, and I go to see Terry to say good morning. And there was this man. He was short in stature, but he had the biggest smile on his face. His arms were open, and he would say, "Good morning." He said, "Hug time," and he would always offer up a hug. And Terry was always smiling, and he was always energetic. And all his ideas were always about, let's change the world. Let's help other people. And every morning I got that shot in the arm from him that he truly was an authentic leader. He truly cared about other people. And in working with him for the many years at the board of directors level, having him out in the trenches with me as I was leading his organization with him, he always made his employees feel like they were the most important people in his life. The other thing Terry did was he infused passion into his communications. He told us about his passions of listening to slack guitar, or about going on a cruise ship, and even joked one day that when he retires, he'd like to be the cruise director on this cruise ship. And I stood back and I said to myself at that time, this is a CEO of an organization, a pretty good sized one, and he's already talking about being a cruise director. When I got to know him, behind him was a lot of interesting experiences, including life challenges that many of you may not even have in your life, but you wouldn't know it because of how he showed up and how he connected deeply and personally to some of the passions that I had. As he got to know me, he learned some of my passions of being a home chef and traveling and in my leadership, telling stories and wanting to be an executive or a CEO and, change the world with my ideas, Terry always found a way to value those and to talk about those with me in the work I was doing. He helped me see how working for him and the organization connected to my passions. So let me take those two stories, Uncle Tom and Terry, the CEO, and what does that all mean as it relates to this concept of Anthony Bourdain suicide at age 61? Well, the people that we remember the most in our lives, this is an aha moment, I want you to get this. The people that we remember the most in our lives are the people that valued us. Let me say that again. The people who you and I will remember the most in our lives are the people that valued us. There are celebrities in the world. There's fallen soldiers all over the world. There's people who have done incredible things, set records. There's average people who have maybe pushed through adversity. And all those people are great. We honor all of them. However, there are people that stand out in our minds because they connect to us in a deep way. We have an unconscious mind that sits below our conscious mind, and it controls everything we do. In fact, it's the majority of the power in our brain that most people don't know how to use. And that machine restores all memories. It keeps track of people like Terry, people like my Uncle Tom, and we remember them because we attach memories to experiences with them. And so let me go back to Anthony Bourdain now. I'd like to honor him for the next few minutes or so. As I grew up, the home I lived in was a chamber of violence and torture. If you read my book, The Way of the Quiet Warrior, chapter 1 is called The Boy. It's a business book that's designed to help leaders navigate through difficult situations in their life that occur outside the boardroom, because if we don't deal with those things, they manifest themselves in our leadership. They can show up in relationships we have with other people in and outside the office. I wrote the book as a hybrid of fiction and fable, of business and fable, so you could see the steps you need to take to navigate, but you could also see stories of real people, in some cases stories of me going through situations in my life and putting the audience, the reader, into that journey. I wanted you, the reader, to say, what's next? And that's my story, and maybe inspire you to get on another pathway or stir something up inside of you. So going back to Anthony Bourdain, when I was a young kid, I was in the kitchen baking cookies all the time. I was watching my mom cook, and in fact, to escape the home, my doctor had 3 daughters and I had 2 brothers, so there were 3 boys. We would hang out at their house. They had a beautiful house with a pool and tennis courts. At that time, it was beyond reach for my mom and dad. And we would hang out there, and these girls were big on cooking. They would be in the kitchen and baking, and I just was absorbing all that. And what it really became was a passion for me. It became an escape outlet. It became something that gave me joy. Not only the joy of learning to cook, and not just bake, but cook anything, but also experiencing visually and through our 5 senses, being a foodie and eating that food. And over my lifetime now, I have written a blog on it, and I've created a post on Facebook many times that food and drink are my passions. So as I was growing in that world and went into the workforce and climbing the ladder in my career, I continued to watch cooking shows, Food Network, and I discovered Anthony Bourdain, and his shows were very different. Anthony Bourdain shows were taking you on a journey. And you know that this show that I do is based on the narrative of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, where I put the audience in the journey. I put the audience in the hero's journey, which is basically taking average people and putting them into heroic situations, following a character in a story. Those are the things we remember the most. Our brains are wired for narrative and storytelling because we retain and remember that faster. So as I'm saying that, I'm walking down the path. It's gravel here, and there's trees, and there's an opening in the forest. As I slow down and I'm going to look through, I can see the rocks and I can see the ocean, or the inlet. The water's out this morning. The tide is out. I can see the large boulders and gravel, and there's barnacles growing on them. And in the distance, there's a couple tankers that are going to be carrying grain and sulfur out to the Pacific Ocean and to the Asia Pacific Rim. So I'm getting going again here on the trail, and as I'm looking down, I'm crossing this trestle bridge that's made from wood. On either side there's greenery, And this hiker just actually slowly jogging past me. She's wearing black tights and a yellow sweater or t-shirt. And well, now she's about 30, 40, 50 yards ahead of me. And I've got nothing but time here to keep going with the story. So do you get the picture? For just a moment there, I put you in the hero's journey. I put you in the story. And I'm telling the story, and I bet you're saying, geez, I can feel where Tom is. And that's what Anthony Bourdain did with his shows. But it's not just his shows that he produced, but it's his history. You see, Anthony Bourdain was a man who dealt with fame and fortune. He went to New York. I believe he learned to cook and traveled the world and discovered his passion for cooking, but he was handling his life with addiction. He was having much difficulty. He lived his life hard. In fact, he lived his life to end his life. Not saying that he was contemplating suicide, but he lived his life as if he wasn't going to be around for the rest of his life, if that makes any sense. He became an award-winning chef, and then on one magical moment, he was discovered for his incredible work, and they began to produce the shows. And he has Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown, and there's another one, Anthony Bourdain, the first series I discovered when he was quite young, and I can't remember the title of it, but you can find it on Netflix or hopefully Google it. But my point is that his shows were different. They weren't standing in a kitchen and being filmed, but he would take us to different parts of the world. He would take us to Vietnam and Asia. He would take us to South Asia, to India. He would take us to the United States, to amazing cities like Chicago and New York and Atlanta, Georgia. Take us into parts of Korea, even as far as Vancouver and Toronto, Canada. He did shows. And so as I watched his shows, they were 30-minute shows which were moving along, and he would be experiencing the cuisine and the culture of these faraway lands, and he would be talking to chefs, and he would be describing about the cooking and also the culture. So you would learn, even if you didn't travel the world, you would learn about every part of the world that he went to, about passions of food and culture. And it was just made my heart sing, and it was connected deeply to my passion and my purpose about cooking. And so I looked forward to seeing the next episode. I can tell you that I probably watched some of his shows 10 times over. You get the picture? So if I didn't even listen to Anthony Bourdain or watch any of his shows for 6 months, when I turned it back on, I would go back and watch a repeat, and it was like I was just there yesterday. Because he put us, those of us who are foodies, those of us who use our passion of cooking to create joy in our life, to create happiness, he put us in that journey. And as we got to know his own story, and we saw some of the tattoos on his arms, and we saw some of the craziness he would do in his shows, some of the things he would say and do, a big part of me and millions of people around the world would say, that guy's just like me. And yet he's willing to have courage to talk about it. Doesn't care what people think. And that's the nature of somebody who has true culture. So as I bring this show to a wrap, and oh boy, there are a bunch of kids up here on the apparatus. They're playing out in the field. The sun is out, and it's early afternoon for me as I'm circling to the halfway point of the walk on the trails today. I want to just tell you that when Anthony Bourdain died, and not long ago when Robin Williams passed, there was a part of my soul that had a hole in it. I actually was in Toronto, Canada on a CEO learning experience, learning to be a better executive coach. I was sitting in a room with 12 others, and remarkably CNN broadcast some news, and I sat in my chair in my hotel room that morning as I was ready to leave to come down to the next session, and I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. I was in disbelief that this had happened, especially the way it happened, as they described a possible suicide by hanging in a hotel room in France where he was filming his show, and he was found by one of the partners of his show. It must have been absolutely incredible. Well, as the story plays out, we're going to learn more about the quiet desperation behind people who deal with mental health challenges, depression, anxiety. And what we know about Anthony is, on the surface, we saw the Hollywood star, the amazing chef, the man of knowledge about the world and that field of passion. But we really never heard about the true stories of the desperation when the camera lights go off, when he goes to his room, when he's been drinking all day and eating food to film the show, and when the fame and fortune, when he walks through the streets and everybody stops him because he is a celebrity, how he dealt with that pressure, which probably became desperation quietly. He left 11-year-old daughter, and we want to pass on honor to anybody who passes in that way, leaving children, it's going to leave some emotional challenges for his family. But at the end of the day, everybody, I want to bring this to a close in that my passion is food and drink. But going back in my life, I discovered certain heroes. Anthony Bourdain was one, and I recognized him on social media and with his podcast, not because he's better than everybody else, but I recognized him because he's somebody that always seemed to be interested in my story. Even though I never met him, his stories were connected deeply to my soul, and I saw his life work as a purpose to go out using his talents to help other people to bring joy in their life. And that's why it's so sad that we lost somebody like that. But his legacy will be left behind, and we'll learn a lot from it. As I wrap up, I want to tell you, and I mentioned this before, that I spent over a decade working in a volunteer role at a board level for a not-for-profit that focuses on marginalized people with mental health challenges, people with addiction issues. And well, when I see what the impact of those things are on people, even though Anthony Bourdain's tragic suicide is a difficult story, I believe that is a story that has meaning and purpose in it, that we're going to learn from it, and the world is going to use it in a good way to help other people who maybe need help and know what, when they do, what to do to move forward. And so everybody, I'm now circling back on the trail. I have another 3 miles to do before I get back close to where I live, and I want to say that that's all for today in honor of Anthony Bourdain. Live with that character, everybody, and just remember, the people that are going to remember you and your legacy are the people that feel that you touched them personally, that you valued them, you loved them, you cared for them. Those are the people that are going to remember you. So what are you doing today and tomorrow in your leadership at work or in your life with your friends and family to nurture and care and show your love and appreciation for those folks, keeping a positive mindset? And so continue to live life with passion, everybody. Find that true purpose and live the life that you deserve and desire.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca